Inspiration Nation, hello, Lee Kemp here again with Joe Neuer. We are triple formatting this week. We are on podcast, we are YouTubing, and we are Instagramming. After that long intro, how you doing, Joe?
I don't know what to say, because every time I sound really enthusiastic. Yes, I really am, and I want to have that enthusiasm, because I seem to sound the same every week, and I just wanted to make it a bit different. And
I think we've mixed that up a bit there for this week.
I think so, and I like this because we've had a little bit of a shifty round, haven't we?
Yes.
This week.
So a more relaxed environment.
Yeah, more relaxed, but there's still some challenges in the room, I think, which we talked about before we come on, didn't we? I feel like I'm just snuggling up to you. I don't know what it is. I'm getting comfortable.
Romantic, Joe. Romantic.
Yeah.
Maybe
what's
not.
going on with that? Anyway.
Well, let's get out of this awkward segue.
Yeah. So I just want to say hi to the Instagram guys on live. Just say hi. So if you do want to ask any questions, just make sure you do ask any questions there as well. Okay. So we are going to start. Do you want the subject then? Or?
Yeah, go on. What are we talking about this week?
Okay. So this week we are talking about perfection versus progress. And I've got also remember that we've got two things going on because I keep looking at the Instagram and then looking at that. So perfection versus progress I want to talk about, because I see a lot of this go on every day. I know you said you worked in the financial industry, I do too. So my role's a bit different to yours in terms of I do training and coaching, but similar in the way that we look at things.
So I think we touched on this a couple of weeks ago, a very little bit, when we talked about the whole. I think there's a quote we put out along the lines of, it's better to have something that's 90%, and get it out there, than have something that's 100% and it never goes out there. And we talked a bit about the butterfly story. Person I work with, and there's someone, a very similar story from one of your influencers who are in that same space as well. But for the if people haven't listened to that, we encourage them to go back in the archive, give that show a listen. But for those who haven't, I suppose, what does that mean to you, the whole progress over perfection? Well, for me,
it's you just got to try and not imagine scenarios. I mean, that used to be me a lot. If you look at, I've said this before in a previous podcast, but you look at my website, if you go to there, you'll see there's gaps. And that's because I was scared to get going, scared to almost like put it out there, because you just didn't know what was going to happen. So it's those sort of, and we'll talk about it in a minute about the what if scenarios and things like that. And for me, it's like I want it to be perfect, I want it to be good, and then it's been on and off for the last, as I said, 7 or 8 years, and now I realise that it's about getting out there. And we did a few things, didn't we? Like when that first time we went live on Instagram, didn't we?
Yeah.
And
I found it a bit of an uncomfortable experience the first time.
Yeah, but I didn't feel that at that stage. But of course, there's things that I wouldn't feel that I wanted to do, and that would be my fear of that perfection. I want to be perfect. And you were saying, you were thinking, what's going to be what did you say it was? The strategies, not strategies, you used another good word.
The logistics.
Logistics, that was it. Logistics and things like that. And you were overcomplicating the fact that all I needed to do was put it on a stand like it is right now, point the camera, press it. But that's because you weren't even probably aware of how that worked, because you weren't in that space.
No, and I think it was probably slightly a defence mechanism as well against doing something that I wasn't sure about doing. So I kind of threw up the first problem that came to mind.
Yeah.
Even though it, like you said, it wasn't a problem because we did it.
Yeah. And that's it. And I think this is what stops a lot of us, and that stopped me. And when I first got back into this 8 months ago, I told you there was that Twitter account that retweeted, rubbish content, don't look at it or whatever. They didn't say that. It was just an account that said we retweet rubbish content. And if I'd let
it was sugar content, though, Joe,
sugar
content. It wasn't rubbish.
Sugar, yeah. So what, and it's not. It wouldn't be
I'm
the
really
best.
sorry to everyone who had to see that just then.
What's that? Sugar. It's all about, but that's it, isn't it? It is about putting it out there, putting yourself out there,
not being afraid of the criticism. I suppose what this always brings something to my mind as well, for an example, on the whole perfection versus progress thing, which again I suppose I wasn't even aware it's something I was doing until someone challenged me on it. So I kind of explained my thought process to them, which is the first time it solidified in my head.
So where did that challenge come from?
So it was something. It was a time in work years ago now, but we were going through quite a large change, and by change it was turning round something that wasn't performing very well. And in my head, there was a kind of roadmap. We had a plan of where we were getting to, and the plan was progressing quite well. And I was doing the kind of motivational leadership side, where it's lots of pats on the back. Yes, we're doing good, people, helping people along that journey, which is always the best side of that sort of role that I like doing. And I was talking to someone about where we are, and they kind of threw out a comment that they thought that I was content with mediocrity or something along those lines. And I kind of asked them what they meant, because in my head I'm all about shooting for the moon. So I kind of said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, you're talking about it being really good, but we're only here. And then I said, don't misunderstand me. We're part way along the journey, but we're where we should be. And I kind of broke it down to him as an example. I said, there isn't a 10-step plan here, but imagine that we've got a goal and we've got the start, where we were when everything was really bad, and there's an end point we've got to get to. And actually, for me, in my head, I've broken that down into 10 chunks. And right now, we're on step 4. And we should be on step 4, and that's where we are. We've still got the other 6 to go, but we're where we should be based on where the plan is right now. So that's why I'm happy with where it is, but we still got to keep going. And that kind of opened their eyes to where it was and what my thought process was on everything. And then I actually sort of relayed back to this person, the reason I think they'd stalled with doing stuff in the past is they just saw the start and the end was big and was scary, and because it was so big, they kind of put off starting it, whereas what I've done is broke it down into lots of little chunks, and all you've got to worry about is the next stage and the next stage and the next stage, and keep pushing through that. And actually we then went through and broke down this big thing we're working on into those chunks and started working through it all. And that, I didn't really consciously have that in my head before I was doing it. That's just the way my mind was working, but it was good to explain it out to someone. And whenever I see things that are talking about this sort of subject, it always makes that pop back in my head, which is the whole, you're worried about the end being perfect, and because it's so big and so scary you never get there, it's doing the steps along the way. And I also said to him, look, we might only get to 8 out of 10, and that might be the best we get to, but 8 out of 10 is better than none out of 10, because we don't start it whatsoever. And I think that really sat well with him, because the truth is, whenever there's a plan laid out, you always have a bare minimum you've got to get to, and then an end afterwards which is a lot better. And quite often you don't get all the way through that perfection bit on top until you've got to look at something else again.
You trigger something in me actually, which is really interesting for me, because what you said, they said, oh, you're saying something it's not great. Is that what they were saying in a nutshell?
Yeah, I was happy with stuff being average, I think was the comment.
And I think you were right, because all they saw was the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
They weren't aware of how you were thinking, how you were breaking. You were like, you knew it was going, but they didn't know where you were going. And I think there's a lot to be said in leadership about that, is that when you're taking people with you, we have to be clear,
showing them that journey.
We have to be clear about what that looks like, because we're only here. And that to them that might be the end, or that goal that they think, is that where we got to? That's not the end. But no, that's not. That's only we're at the midpoint at the moment. They didn't realise that, or something like to that effect. So I think there's a lot going back to perfection, progress versus perfection. I think if people are concerned of not getting started, and you're a leader like yourself, and I have in the past, is making sure we're clear about what those steps are, not overwhelming them, of course, because there is with change and things, there's always a certain level of anxiety. And I think our role as leaders or trainers, coaches, is to provide that structure or that framework for them to be able to visualise and think. For all different types of learners as well, some might visualise it, it might be do verbalise, whatever.
Yeah.
And depending on the form you're taking, whether you're going to do it by email, whether you're going to do it by face-to-face, whatever it takes, how big that piece is making sure we're clear on where we are, and so we make sure we get the right outcome. So, and that also minimises that resistance, I think, as well, because when you want to bring people with you, they're going to resist and go in the what if scenarios. What if you did this? And this will minimise that, because they understand where they're going, and you can deal with those things along the way. I really like that. I think that's a really good time example.
And I say that always makes it pop back in my head, and I say it's just like you said, and there is a bit where I think with me, and looking back on it, could have opened up what that was more to people, or even certain people who are involved in it, because sometimes even breaking down the journey overwhelms it for people. But also it is still that view that it's better to do most of it than do none of it, because you're scared of not doing all of it.
And also you are going to encounter resistance, and I think you've got to accept that there will be and deal with that. But remember that you go quite fast I think you just almost like grab it, go. Where people sometimes there's different types of people just want to reflect on it a bit, and sometimes you're trying to bring them, you're trying to drag them, and they go, I don't want to come. And that's when you get that resistance. It's recognising that, isn't it? But it's difficult when you're dealing with multiple people. That's when you've got other people around that maybe around them that you could influence to help them along with that journey, which I think is another influential journey about perfection versus progress. Is how do you instill that in people that you lead, and get them to understand that, look, it's not going to be perfect, it is going to be bumpy, and actually say to them, this isn't going to be like a lovely smooth journey, this is going to be up and down, there's going to be challenges, but I want you to be with me, and I'll support you as much as I can. And I think there's a lot to be said. I really like that, by the way. It just sparks a lot of things in my head about how we can bring other people through it, and part of my job as a trainer and coach is to do that. So for instance, when I deliver training, that people come in the room and they have no knowledge of anything, and there's this whole, we talked about the model last week about the unconscious incompetence and etc., and that is a lot of a journey around that. They're not sure where we are, so I draw more roadmap on the wall, or not on the wall but on the board, on the big face walls, but I have a whole schedule that I show them the first week, this is what it's going to look like, and it calms people down even for the day. There's people like don't really care, like Lee, that people like Lee don't really care about the days. They're going to go there, they're quite happy. There are people that come in the room and they look at my board and literally study that board because I put up the stages.
They want to know what the schedule is.
Yeah, because they're afraid it's that, I'm going to have to make progress today, but I'm a bit scared, what's that look like? So we've talked a lot about this actually, and it isn't really, because it's really great because that story that you said to me really made me think about some really great things. So for me, I got a definition.
Is this you getting us back on schedule again here?
I think I'm a little bit. Yeah, well, you knocked me off schedule last week with all the tools business, and so I'm trying to keep up.
So your obsession with my tool is all your business, okay?
I'm not going with that. I'm not even going to say that, because that would just cause another target. So I've defined it. It's the state or quality of being perfect. That's really the definition of it. Perfection, that's what it is. And that's the thing that holds people back. And that's why I want this podcast, and I'm sort of looking to you guys, I want you to realise that don't overcomplicate things. I really like what Lee said about chunking things down is one of the greatest things you could do. And in fact, one of the things when I worked with Lee, and we referenced it in the previous podcast, is when we worked together, there's this big thing I was doing, wasn't it? It was just massive, and it was big vision, and I struggled. I loved the vision, but I struggled to how was I ever going to fulfil that vision, and Lee helped me a lot with how we could break it down and start to engage certain people, and it was really, really effective, and I learned a lot from that. And I think a lot, and you might have a big vision, and so what I'm saying, you might have a big vision about something, and what I learned from that is about this podcast and the website, and and Ryan is lovely doing our videographing and stuff like that. Is
videography a word?
I don't know, is it a word?
I don't think so.
Let's go with it. Own it, Joe. It's a word.
Hashtag videography. It could be an Inspiration Nation thing. What's what going with that? Well, I've lost my.
Something about videographing.
Videographing. Yeah. So just I've got a big vision for this whole. Or I had a big vision, and now it's by doing the things like we talked about before about the daily videos and getting different views now from Ryan and you, and it's starting now to almost like take shape. And it's not about the outcomes of that perfectionism. I don't want it to be perfect. Actually, I want it to be imperfect, because I think something even greater, with great minds like Ryan, yours, and us together, we're much more powerful than one person just going, hey, this is what it's got to be. There's a lot of, I think, imperfection actually creates more innovation. I think it goes back to what you're really keen on, that innovation space.
Yeah.
Where you might have an idea, but you bounce ideas, and you get a little bit of they call it the friction, don't they? And being comfortable with friction, and that's when we talked about even today, where we changed the venue of the recording because you got some feedback from people, didn't you, about the video? What did they say?
Yeah, just that it was a bit, again, kind of with the theme of what we try and set, that us being sat behind a table looking like a lot of other people do when they're doing video podcasts was a bit, traditional isn't the word, but a bit formal, and suppose it didn't kind of fit with the more casual vibe we try and put on some of the stuff we're doing. I just thought it might be more engaging if we're in a bit more casual setup, which is exactly what we're trying today, which it may work, it may not work, but it's better to give it a go and try than, like you said, spend hours analysing the perfect setup and then never doing anything else.
Well, do you know what?
Because the fact is, we wouldn't have time to do that, so we'd probably say, "Oh, let's just not video it," and then we've got nothing.
But can I be honest? Like, I did almost witness a bit of trying to be perfect with this, even this bit of piece here. We was faffing around in there, weren't we? It was like, what's the light here like? What's that light here like? not with faffing, but we were like almost like there was a bit of complication in it, but we are pretty much doers. I mean, like Ryan's a doer. Like he set it up. We've got like literally. I'd love you to say the setup. Can we have to take a picture of the setup? Really, I think we should do.
I
that.
don't think we need people to see our high-tech setup or our
think
camera
so.
balanced on the top of a chair to get the perfect angle.
This is real, isn't
Don't
it?
expose me like that.
But this is the whole point. It's making do, isn't it? But again, if we're uncomfortable with that, we talked about this before coming on live, didn't we?
And I don't think it's making do. It's just getting the job done. Sometimes you just need to do what you need to do to make it happen.
Yeah. And that means if it's not perfect, it's not perfect, but it's getting out there because the content is the thing that's the important thing, getting out there and doing it, isn't it?
So there, and I know it might not be what's in the ideas you've got, Joe, but are there any good examples you can think of where that idea of perfection has stalled or just got rid of progress? Things haven't happened because of it that you've witnessed or that you deal with?
Yeah, I see it I see that in training all the time. People want to get things right, perfect. So even last week we're rolling out a new process. It's not a new process for the business, but it's a process for people to learn. And I think Ryan, you were talking about systems and that the other week, weren't you? You were talking about different systems and learning systems and it's about that. But there were people in the room who were just like waiting. They couldn't get started because they didn't want to get anything wrong. They wanted to make sure it was perfect. And I said, and I sat with them, and I'm not the best at processes and stuff, and even because I do more of the sort of theoretical why you're doing the thing you're doing, and then we've got a coach in the room who provides the context around what happens actually on the floor.
Yeah.
So it's a really good mix. It's really powerful because the last thing I want to do when I do training is like I don't want people to just press buttons and know not why they're pressing the buttons. So that's my job to understand what's the impact of you pressing that or doing this or taking that sort of action. And the coach's role is to say this is what happens when you're out there in reality using it, and this is the effect it has. And that's what I see. People don't actually move. They just sit there, and even for we had like almost like 2 or 3 hours practice, and like we had like maybe 3, I'm allowed to say cases. I'm trying not to give too much away. And they hadn't even started one or just started. I'm afraid of getting it wrong. I said, the fact that you're afraid of getting it wrong is a good thing for me because you care about the outcome, but you need to get started.
Yeah.
So they needed that thing I talked about, like sitting with them and almost having to sort of help them with the first pieces, and after that, once they got confident that they could do it. So an example of being perfect is paralysis. I've had it myself, and I've had it myself, and I've had that with the big visions that I create. And that's the thing with me is I do have those big visions. I have something I sketch out, and I find I make it so huge that I could sometimes go, where am I going to start with this?
Yeah.
And the thing is, just get started. That's the whole point. It's just to get started, and that's what you were referencing and what you were saying. That's where I think you have got. That's quite a natural ability of yours, which a lot of people don't have. But that is, I still think it's a learnable skill.
I think it's a thing I always like
skill.
to try and bring out with people is that thought and just that comfort. And I suppose for me, when I'm working with people, is create an environment where people are comfortable that you can just give it a go, and if it goes wrong, you pick yourself up and you try again.
Yeah. I think you're right as well. And like the thing is, when you're doing these things, like in my training room, we've got a training room and coaching or whatever you're doing. Yes, you can get things, but it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to sink the business or whatever. You don't want to do it wrong, of course, but you've got a reason why you've done it wrong, and provided you learn and you grow from that, that's the whole point. I mean, we don't go through life being perfection. It's not even a thing. Even when you get to the top level in whatever industry you have, you will still not be perfect. There'll be something that will go awry, or you've done something, and that's a healthy thing. But the whole thing I'm trying to get through in this whole subject matter of perfection versus progress, if you try and be perfect, it will paralyse you. And I want people to get out from that and actually start to do something and not be perfect. Care about the outcome, of course. Care about it, but don't let that be the paralysis or the barrier for you going out there and trying the thing. Or if you're really passionate about it, put it on a hold because you think you should stay with the thing that's safe, which can happen a lot as well. I say I've got this perfect thing that I want to do, all this like great vision, but I'm not going to do it because it's really big. I don't want to start and I don't want to get it wrong. So I'm going to stick with this over here that I'm all right with. I'm quite comfortable with, but it's not the thing that's going to make me. It's not going to light me on fire. I just stay comfortable, and I see a lot of that as well, which I get concerned about.
Yeah.
Because I get concerned about people living their lives on a sort of just existing or just getting to a level where they're okay, but they're not living their full life. And I think that, again, that's that perfection piece, which I think is another barrier which I've seen in people.
But I think there are people, and we've talked about this in some of the podcasts before, who do, in terms of their top motivators in life, that feeling of safety is there for them. It's one of those things, and I think hopefully everyone, or most people who listen to this, if not everyone, because the subject matter are people who like to be outside their comfort zones, or people who aspire to be those people outside their comfort zones, and hopefully these examples we're given, these conversations are giving them inspiration to do that. But I do think there is a big amount of population as well who want to be safe and actually will feel happy being safe, and I don't think we can bring everyone in. I'd want to bring everyone possible into university, so don't get me wrong, that's where I am. And that doesn't mean I don't get, as people do, if I'm honest, frustrated with people who are very different mindsets, especially when you're doing things together. But I think for me, the reality is not everyone is that sort of person, and actually putting themselves in a position where something could go wrong, whether it does or doesn't, is the worst thing in the world for them. I think sort of saying about examples of real world, and I only thought of this while you were talking, but I think one of the things that I would like to encourage to be eradicated, if that's a well structured sentence, is people who bash people for being innovative and pushing themselves outside the comfort zone and doing things differently. Kind of in a similar way, if I'm honest.
That, where you've hashtag bashing?
Well, I don't. That's a very different hashtag, Joe.
Is it? No, but I know what you mean. I can't believe you just, Ryan. Literally, I did.
To be fair, you walked into that one.
There we go. Right, so
I'm outnumbered.
In the same way, if I'm honest, Joe, that I think we need to be careful not to be too critical of people who just want to be safe, but with there being a big pit in the middle and need pulling out of it.
Yeah.
But the big one, an example I see, and it's a big personality as well, but it's Elon Musk. So there are so many articles I see on social media where people get gratification when he's perceived to not be doing well. And I don't see how anyone can see that he's not doing well, but I think the value recently of Tesla, and I don't know it all in great detail if I'm honest, because I'm more interested in the outputs of what he does than the business stuff behind the scenes, but apparently the value of Tesla is now lower than the value of SpaceX, was an article I saw.
Right.
And it wasn't talking, and I think it's because the value of Tesla's come down, but it wasn't talking about what he's doing with these things, the innovation, the fact that the whole electric car revolution that is existing is down to pioneering stuff that he did. The fact that whether it comes off or not, they're looking to do this stuff to make space travel a commercial entity. It was loving the fact that Tesla's value was going down. Look how bad he's doing. And and that will all be, that's a sweeping statement for myself there, but that will largely be from people who've never tried to do anything themselves, not pushing themselves out there, taking gratification in someone through their eyes failing. And as we talked about last week, failures are a hugely important thing you have to go through to get to where you want to get through. And honestly, if Tesla crashing and burning and someone else picks up the mantle, exactly like all the top-end car makers are doing, pick up the mantle and run with electric cars, and his legacy to the world is that, I don't see how anyone can see that there's a failure there. But I think there is this thing, and again, it probably pushes on comfort zones for people, where people, I suppose, protecting their insecurities, love to see that failure in other people, when all they're doing is pushing the envelope and trying the furthest out there things you can think of that won't all come off. But the progress he's made with getting electric cars to where he's got it, even if tomorrow nothing else happens in his shoes and everyone else is taking it forward, he's the one who opened the conversation.
Agreed. I don't think it's going to happen, by the way.
No, I absolutely don't think that's going to happen either. I think it's all these things are up and down.
Absolutely.
But to see, even if he stopped today, well, as I said, people are going on about failure just because the value of the company is going down. But look what's been achieved. Even if he doesn't fulfil his whole dream, he's got further than anyone else ever did with it.
I think we could look back and go, do you know what? Even if I wouldn't want this, but if he's on his deathbed tomorrow, he could say, I've done my best to get to
pioneer.
He could just go, I've done my lot, and I think that's what I want for people. And I think it's a big thing. I think we have to accept that there's always going to be those types of people. And you're right. And I think people would project what they would love to do or their inaction on others and say, I feel good now because someone else is failing, because you see,
that's self-gratification for them.
I think it's almost like my confirmation. You see, Failure's not a good thing, is
You
it?
failed. I
You
shouldn't have
failed.
given
See,
that a
I was
go.
right. Yeah, I was right. So you shouldn't even tried. But this is what I want this podcast to do. I want this podcast to wake people up.
Yes.
Because I think we're all like I was going through my photocopied life, and I love that phrase, and I'm going to reference Evan Carmichael for coming up with that photocopied life, i.e. get up, go to work, go to bed, have dinner, no sorry, get up, go to work, come home, have some dinner, go to
So
bed.
you don't have dinner in bed.
Now you're trying. Now you're throwing me the track. Yeah. Well, dinner in bed. You can have dinner in bed.
Sorry,
Mix it up a
carry
bit.
on.
Why not? But you get the gist. Don't you? So I
You're
felt
in your
like-
routine.
You felt. Yeah. I felt I was getting up, go to work, get up, go to work, come back home, have something to eat, go to bed, and that was the same day every day. And I said reference my journey. If you want to go and check it out, it's a previous podcast. It took that to wake me up. What I'm hoping this podcast is going to do through our conversations, that people don't have to go through something like that to wake up. And I think Lee, you're one of those exceptions. I think, you've gone through some hard times, but you've always had that natural. I feel you've always had that natural. What can I do now, or what's my thing? And I think that's a blessing. I wish I'd had that. I had to learn this whole thing through going to that dark place. I don't know what you think about that. Maybe it's something you want to tell me about how you maybe adopted that strategy of the wake up and go, right, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go off and just going to go start doing it.
Well, ironically, I think, and because I know what it is more now, and again through our conversations and stuff. But I think I like creating. That's where my mind is. I like creating things, whatever it is. I like seeing stuff be built, whether that's physical or that's more of an artistic isn't the word, but like this, like we're doing the podcast, creating something to leave behind. And legacy is the big thing. It's about what you leave behind, what your impact is on things. And as I look back, that's always been there, but I wasn't aware of it. And ironically, at a time when you were going through part of your darkest time, was when in a work capacity that stuff's getting sparked in me, and I started doing my first real creative things and having that space and experimenting with things and supporting and developing other people. And actually it was your support and encouragement that started that journey in me, when actually I know now from our conversations is when you were going through that worst part in your life.
Yeah,
it's just alright. It's just, and again, I had no idea that stuff was going on, but then it's what comes out onto other people. But I think I've always had that there. But I do think there's a time when it was more of that same routine and doing bits and bobs and stuff. And just as time has gone on, I've just become more comfortable with pushing the envelope, and it has happened a bit more naturally rather than being a big bang event. But the same as you, I would absolutely love to encourage that in other people wherever it can be done. And again, whether that works well or doesn't. And I just won't give all the specifics, I don't like me talking about it, but a very good friend of mine who I grew up with was in that kind of cycle, didn't really know what they wanted to do. And we had a couple of, and I didn't know it at the time, but we had a couple of conversations that kind of sparked them to go off and follow their dream.
Wow.
And to them, and I've had conversations where it's at times where they feel like they failed in their dream because they didn't reach their peak. But actually, when they're talking to me about it, they did so many things that I'm in awe of. Even though they didn't get where they wanted to, they got quite far with it. And they kind of cycled back and have moved back into everyday life, if you want. That's a better word for it. But they experienced and they did that. And actually, it's only when I talked to that person quite later down the line that it turned out that some of the conversations I had with them had actually spurred them on with doing that, which is really nice to hear. But again, they did it, and they, from their view, and I don't agree with it, but they almost felt like at times they'd failed with it. But they had so many fantastic experiences that within this sphere of what they wanted to get into, which was a thing that's a dream for a lot of people, that it's really amazing. But again, I had no idea that conversation had pushed them off in that way to do it.
Right, yeah. That's almost like they're getting to the stage where they're almost there and they pull back a little bit. It sounds like they get to that stage where you're almost going to break through, but you step back.
And they've had a couple of moments where they step back, but then something's happened that's pulled them, and they have broke through the next season, and they kept going with it.
It's really weird because when in the journey with the sort of coaching stuff like that, when I was sort of doing it off and on and off and on, I think sometimes you get that fear of, I think I'm going to break through, and then you pull back from it because you're a little bit fearful of, if you break through, what's that? Almost
next?
like the fear of success, almost that fear of, wow, if this suddenly does take, what's the impact? And I've had that where I've had these like emails from people. Oh, can I put a blog on your blog? And because obviously it started to get momentum. And I don't know whether there's some subconscious thing of whether there's a subconscious thing in us that says when we just at that breakthrough point, whether we unconsciously step back because we're fearful of if we step more, there's going to be that big, almost like
that
not a big event, but like
mechanism.
almost like a step back. If you just step forward more, you're going to get the thing, but you step back and you almost revert and go back. But you don't ever go backwards, grow, but you don't step into the success or
Yes.
the potential thing because of the fit. And that's a really interesting thing what you said about the person who got this thing.
And what I'll do, I'll speak to them. I'll see
I'd love
maybe
to.
they'd like to come on and talk about their
Yeah,
story with us.
I'd really
Because I
enjoy
think
that.
it's a really good example of people really pushing themselves outside their
I'd
comfort
really
zone.
like
It'd be a
that.
really good one. And again, someone who's gone for it. And again, and I know this is about the perfection over progress
Yeah.
thing, but I think it's all in the same sphere,
Yes,
and they
yeah.
really did that. I had a brilliant segue into doing a plug for your website there, Joe, and I completely forgot what it was. So instead, I'm just going to say, get your Google up, put in JN Coaching Technologies. It will take you over to Joe's website. There's a lot of resources there, a lot of materials, a lot of reading things from. Completely lost my way over everything, but it's fine. We're not going to cut this. We're going to keep rolling like we used to in the old days.
Got to, yeah.
So loads of reading
The old
materials,
days.
loads of resources, and again, coaching is Joe's bread and butter. All these great words, all this wisdom, you can have that in one-on-one coaching in what you're doing. Just contact Joe through the website. That is JN Coaching Technologies.
Yeah, excellent. Good
Right,
stuff.
so let's get back on track again,
Yeah,
Joe.
so I think that'd be great if you got them on. I think if you could, that'd be great. I think these stories and stuff, I think it hopefully inspire others. So I think we talked a lot around, about people and perfection versus progress. Again, the what if scenarios, they play a big part, and we talked about those as well.
I'd like to go a bit because I know you had some good examples on that. Because I think we touched on that a bit, but I think that's a big killer for things is when you've got your project ongoing or you've got your thing you're building or creating or trying to launch, and you go into, like you said, Joe, what if mode, and you come up with all these scenarios of why it might go wrong, and actually it's better not to do it just in case these things happen.
Yeah, and I think
And it's never what if it goes well, it's always what if it goes wrong.
Because we're programmed to, again, it's that whole, our old brains programmed, aren't they, to protect and preserve our energy, so we don't want to do things that put us at risk. But like, again, I think you reversed the podcast as well previously is, that's not the case now. We're not being chased. I think you said chased by a saber-toothed tiger or something like that. We're not, but that fear feels really real.
Yeah.
In fact, there was someone on Instagram, because I did a video, I can't remember what day it was, but about fear and stuff like that, and perfectionists. I think Kills in some they said, they didn't agree with me that you can push through fear. They said there's so many different people with certain different problems, and I think there is that, of course there is, and I'm not going to disagree with that, but I think a majority of people can push through that. That's what I feel, and I think that if you have got a genuine fear or something, yes, there might be deeper issues, and you need to go and examine those, go to professional to examine those. But I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts that if you do, in the majority of the time, do push through, then you almost like eat a little bit of that poison every day, or eat the judgment or whatever. Then that's going to make you stronger. And you're telling yourself, you're putting a vote in the box for yourself to say that I am going to do that difficult thing. And every time you do that, put a little vote, and it's like a little voting box. Yep, done that, right? Okay, and there's that vote. Votes get bigger. That's the person you become because you vote for yourself by those little habits that you do every day. I'm referencing James Clear, of course, on that. Giving him credit for it, and Jordan Peterson for eating a little bit of poison every day. He's a clinical psychologist. Go and check him out at Jordan P. Peterson. Great, really, really good. So that perfection piece can eat into that even. That was quite good. But that's what we're talking about. So the what if scenarios is what your brain creates. Now when you think about what your brain creates in terms of the what if scenarios, think if you could use that power, instead of creating what ifs, what could.
Do you know what I was going to suggest? The same thing there is whether you can retrain your brain to motivate you with what could go well. Yeah.
What could I do?
Rather than the things that can go wrong, start looking at if I do this, this will go well. This is where I'll be. This is where I'll be.
Yeah. And a lot of the coaching language, when you have coaching sessions, is around using those types of words. So you say, well, what could you start to do? What's the first thing you could start to do? And that starts to in my view, as a coach, it starts to eliminate the what ifs, and it calms that part down, because through coaching you develop a plan, and when you have a plan that's executable, that's manageable, that you think you can do in bite-sized chunks, what you're not going to do is you're going to have this massive great vision. You're not going to go, I'm doing it all in one day, because that's totally what we tend to think. That's what I wanted to do. I want to do everything now. It's going to happen now. My anxiety kicking on. No, I'm not going to do anything. I'll kick back from it. So it's about what could I do in the next hour that's going to move me one step forward.
Yeah.
Today. So this whole thing started with my daily videos, and I heard Evan Carmer, he sort of gave me another shake, said, you're ready, just do it. And it's like this thing, this message hit me so hard. Right, I'm doing a video. And that was it, just the one video, and that's where it started. And that, I think, through that conversation, and of course, through that conversation, there's coaching conversation, which I'm having more and more and more with people now, because I'm actually living and breathing that. It's shifting people from that perfection state to, I'm going to start making some progress because I'm having a plan. It's different for me. So I'm going to put an example. We had the same vision, right? Like exactly the same vision.
Yeah.
Our approach to that would be totally different because that's the coaching conversations. Your plan, even though I'm going to get to the same outcome, would be different to my plan.
Yes.
And that's what coaching is about, is bringing that plan out of you, because I believe as a coach that you have the plan. My job as your coach is to help you discover that plan. So if I can help you discover that plan, because it's come from you, you're going to be more likely to follow it.
Because you're bought into it, because it's
not,
your own idea.
It's me as a coach, not to give you a plan. I can give you mentorship, and I can say, well, if you said to me, what do you think of that? Of course I could give you that and a bit of mentorship, but my job is not to do that. My job is to say, well, what could you start doing? And then you might say, well, what resource I might point you to a resource or whatever. But my job is not to tell you what to do, is to help you provide a plan that's executable to you, so you move from perfection to progress. You have those little bite-sized chunks, and it may only be like one action off or might be two actions off a coaching plan, so it's manageable as well, because when you put too many things together, it's overwhelm. You can't have that. You've got to obviously check in. So those are the sorts of things that I would talk about. So cancelling out the what if scenarios, they come up in coaching conversations. So the first, even when you have a coaching conversation, for the first half an hour, even I've been over an hour with people, because sometimes you just have to get the story out. The story is the what ifs. They come out and I listen to them, and they come out, and then gradually, one by one, we'll challenge them. So it's like when you have thoughts, everyone has thoughts, and our job here is to think, well, everyone has thoughts, and you can't control them. You just got to say, is that real? Is that something that's going to affect me?
So for the people listening now, people watching, what would your advice be to get through them? Because obviously not everyone has the benefit of a coach to talk those through. Obviously, our first step is to encourage them to go to JN Coaching Tech and sign up for some coaching with you.
Yeah, do that one, just go to the resources.
When you're there, I suppose that's it. What are the things people can do to help to get themselves in that space, to work through those what ifs by themselves when they're in that space?
So the first thing is to say, what is it? What is the what if? And what's it? Is that real? Is it a realistic thing that's going to happen? 9 times out of 10, when you take the action, it's not. So the first step is to realise that it's a thought, it's not happened. You want to execute, you want to create something. So the first step is to, 1, examine what that is, and 2 is to start to think, actually, what could I start to do to start to execute the plan? So you can challenge it. So I don't know, I'm just trying to think, even if I think about this whole Inspiration Nation thing, right? That one of my what ifs was, what if people don't like it? What if people don't watch? What if what if people just hate it? What if people start hating and start typing?
Yeah.
Real or not? Is that real or not? It can happen, couldn't it? Right? What ifs? Not happened yet, has it? Well, I've had one, haven't I? I said to you before, I've had one. One out of, how long are we doing it now? 7 months?
Yeah.
1 really negative comment, and I've had 2, another challenge just mentioned. That's great, I love that. That's the whole point. That's loving that.
But like you said, that worst case scenario in your head was never
realised.
It's not going to happen.
Do you know what? People, right? When you put your stuff out there, people think about themselves. They're not really, unless it's providing value. They're thinking about them. They're not thinking about what Joe's doing or what Lee's doing. They're thinking about, what am I going to have for tea? What's my next thing? Or what am I doing? They're thinking about me. So they're not really, unless they really spark something controversial. They're going to say, oh, well, that's all right. I like that. That's fine. But unless it really creates something, they're not going to really sort of go after you.
Yeah.
But as I say, I suppose as this podcast grows and things, of course there will be more change, but we'll encourage that. But who knows? It may not have that happen. It may not. But again, it's another what if, isn't it? So you ask us some real tangible what ifs. There you have it. We have a real life example. We're walking through this journey. So when we're sharing our journeys on these podcasts, this is what we're sharing. We're real time journeys and the what ifs that come up for all of us. Give me a what if for you when you started doing all this. Have you got any that you have?
I think the biggest what if was just what if no one listens. I think that was it. But again, if I suppose thinking that through, because I got through that, the contrary is to not do it. So if I don't do it, then no one is going to listen because there's nothing for them to listen to. But it's safe. Yeah. But actually, the worst thing is, and I think we talked about this in the previous show as well, if no one listens, no one knows. There's no harm from it. So I suppose, and I'm thinking on my feet here with it, but it's part of that step, and I suppose encourage people to do, not only get your what ifs out there, whether that works for you to think them through, to write them down, to talk them through with someone, but then think about what the consequence of that, even if that thing happens, how bad is that consequence, and get through all those steps so you can get all that noise out of your head and get to the stage where you're being productive again.
Yeah, and I think noise is important, because when we talk about noise, we all got those thoughts and everything like that. And I think you coined it. I've used it a lot. I use it a lot in my coaching. So if you have a coaching session with me, you look at what's the worst that could happen. That is a really good, powerful phrase. What's the worst that could happen? No one's going to listen. Great. That's not bad, is it? It's not bad. Really, come on. It's not. It's the great. And you're doing something you really love to do. So what's better than that? So it's just about that. And when people have something, and that's really one way people get about that perfection. I know we sort of talked a lot around perfection versus progress, and that's what it's about. This is about waking people up to that. Don't give in to those what if thoughts, because they may never ever happen. Of course they might happen, but it's unlikely.
Yeah. Like
we've proven it. This is like experimentation on ourselves. I've done it for the last 10 years. I put blogs out there. People can like it. I've actually deleted blog posts and no one's even commented on it. I deleted one. I think it's about the Matrix. It's sort of my what ifs. I wrote it, I posted it, and I thought, I don't like that, and I deleted it. And I wish I kept it on there, because what I wanted to do, I was thinking I could have used that as evidence to say, hey, look, I put this out there. I think it's very good. And some of them, if you look back to my blog, some of them are terrible. I look at them now and I think, but I'm leaving them there because for me, it's part of that journey. But that's my self-judgment. And you might say that's okay, or you might think they're absolutely rubbish. But that's the journey. That's the whole point. Is for me to see, I can put it out there, and if you're thinking to write a blog, write it and put it out there.
But again, like you said, it might not be as good as you wanted it to do, but it's out there. And I suppose again, back to that whole percentage thing, you've got the 100% perfection of what you want to do, that idealistic vision. You've got absolute complete failure. And we talked about that the other week. And actually, even absolute complete failure isn't a problem. But then there's a whole spectrum in the middle. Yeah. So actually, if it's 1%, if it's 5%, if it's 10%, you've still achieved somewhat of what you're looking to do, and you're not going to land at 0%. Let's be honest; it's very rare something completely bombs. You're also very unlikely to land at 100%, but you will be somewhere within the middle of that spectrum. And I think everywhere along there should be viewed as a success. And like you said, it's a journey. If you complete 10% of what you complete, then aim for 20 next time, aim for 30 next time. Oh look, I'm nicking your hand there, Joe.
It's rubbing off. So Lee's picked this up, and I mustn't forget this actually. I want to go back to that. The thread. What was the thread? Oh, I lost it. No. What was it you were saying? You were saying I was picking up. That's right. You were saying about doing it that it's not going to be 100%. It's going to be 0%. It's going to be something in the middle, like a spectrum of success there. And what you should be proud of is the doing of it, and the actual. Be proud of the effort that you put in. Proud of the effort that you decided to do a video. And you decided to write the blog. You decided to go and speak to your boss about your pay rise. You decided that you would go and read this article and go and talk to the person you wanted to talk to them about. You decided that you wanted to go and apply for that position. It doesn't matter if you get the position or not. It doesn't matter. The fact that you applied is success. The fact that you put yourself on the line, put yourself out there, is the success. So at the moment, progress versus perfection. My daughter's current boyfriend, I've told you about this, he's going for a job, and each of these is 3 stages to this particular interview process. Always say you put your CV in or whatever, and if they get you an interview, success. But even before that, the fact that you put the CV forward is progress.
Yes,
it's success. It's like, and you've got to recognise that, and too many of us don't recognise that piece. You recognise it's got to be about the result. It's got to be about me getting this and that. It's not. It's about you, because what you're telling yourself.
You don't paralyse yourself with the fear of I'm not going to get the job and never go for it.
Yeah.
Like you said, you put yourself out there, and again, exactly like you said, progress over perfection.
Yeah. And what you're telling yourself, when you vote for yourself of doing that, you are becoming that character. You're building that into your own character, and to coin it, you are doing yourself into the character. Right?
Yes.
And that's what it's about, really. So I think that was great, by the way, really good. What Wow, this is. I mean, I think we talked more about it again. Call it a perfection mindset. They're all mindsets you hear about this all the time. If you sort of listen to a lot of coaching podcasts or inspiration, you hear a lot about mindset, and I think there's mindsets that we need to be aware we have that and need to start to shift it. So you can have a perfection mindset. So I look at someone like Michael Jackson, who had a potentially perfection mindset because he'd like to get all dance moves right and things like that, and he had that, but he would still do stuff, and so things like that. So there is a point where you can still have a mindset that you want to do it right, but you keep refining it, refining, so you can still do it. But what I think is important is that you still recognise the success rather than sort of the outcomes. So if you do have a perfection mindset, be aware of it, but please don't let it stop you from doing the things. If you're doing things, don't berate yourself for getting it totally wrong. Just recognise what you've got right and say, okay, well, I can make it a bit better. So that means you don't get frozen. So just be mindful you do have that perfection mindset. It's still beneficial, but use it to your advantage.
Yeah, you're still aiming to do. You're still proud of what you're doing. You're still aiming to do something good.
Yeah.
But if that gets out of control, it gets to the point where you're doing nothing, and then that isn't good in itself.
Yeah. So that sort of thing. And there's loads of different types of mindsets we talk about. Again, for me, it's just starting with small actions. It's just that I said about the coaching, and the coaching that I do is starting with those small actions that are, they're a bit uncomfortable. We talked about that before, about being uncomfortable, but a little bit uncomfortable, because you need to be uncomfortable a little bit, because otherwise, if it was easy, you're just doing the same things every day, and you don't want to photocopy life. That's the whole thing. And going back to that as well, when I was up, I think I did some videos up in Leicester. Yeah. I do a travel to Leicester.
I do enjoy your outdoor videos, I have to say.
I might do a few more of those. I might try a few more of those, walk through the streets. But that was where I got that person. I don't know if I don't think I did, but that I talked to them and they were talking about, but I just go home and did exactly what I did. And I said to them, that's my job. That's my job to wake you up from that, because I can see where that's going. All I'm doing is coming to work, going home, going to bed, going. And that's, for me, that's a danger sign, where someone's not thinking about intentionally where they want to be. Either they're playing the safe card, and I get people want to be safe, but I personally believe people are playing safe because they want to be safe, but they do have dreams. Everyone has dreams, and I don't want people to be going accelerating to 90 years old and going, what if I tried that? But just get to 90 years old and go, yeah, I want to do that, and do it, and like give it your best shot. Like if I died tomorrow, I could safely say to myself that I've done everything I could to do what I want to do and get this message out there to people. I'll be happy with that. And I think that's what I've got to live by every day. Every time you wake up every morning, you should be thinking like that. You should be thinking, right, today is another day. What can I do to make myself feel proud of the effort? So when I lay my head on that pillow at night, I go to bed going, I've done everything. I think we've done a lot there, actually. Well, what are we on? Oh, well, okay, 47. There's a lot of things we talked about. I think we've done a lot of that. So I just wanted to I thought this was a brilliant quote by Ed Milet that I think I want to do. So at Ed Milet on Instagram. So if you ever get a chance, Ed Milet on Instagram. Complexity is the enemy of execution. I love that.
I really like that. You said that to me earlier before we came on the air. Yeah. I really like that quote.
Yeah. So remember that. So even if you're like today, give yourself a break today, just chill out. But if you've got a big dream, big goal, think about this phrase: complexity is the enemy of execution. So what you got to do, what's that saying, is you've got to uncomplicate whatever it is and make it simple, make it straightforward, just take the first step and do it. So tomorrow morning, take that first step forward, I would say to you.
There's a mantra I live by that I use with people all the time, which is an acronym.
Well, go on.
Which is KISS. KISS. Oh. And I stole this from someone at a TV show, a fly on the wall thing. Yeah. And KISS stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid.
Love that.
And I think that every plan you do, no matter what you do, you've got to remember, exactly like you said with that quote, but the more layers of complexity you build in, normally to cover off all those what if situations, the more you head towards stuff not happening.
Yeah.
It's all about keeping it simple.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I don't say, do I say it's stupid? I don't. Keep it simple.
It's not as funny without the extra S.
Yeah, I actually say keep it simple silly. I don't know why I can't say the other one. But when in train, I use it, but I don't know why I can't say that. But anyway, that's a bit of a mute point. But again, execution is for me is the key.
But once, I'm just going to put this out there for context before we wrap this up, Joe. Once I was in a reverse of situations, coaching Joe for a meeting that he was going to have, and I felt it's really important to help relax the room that Joe put some comedy in by using a word, and it was another S word,
Oh,
but a more severe S word than stupid. And it was, we're going to cut out all this, insert beep. And you couldn't do it, could you? That was part for you that you just weren't comfortable to do.
Should I do that though? I mean,
Well, that's what I'm just thinking here. Is I want to push you to, in a situation you'd be uncomfortable with, where it's appropriate, using some language like that.
The thing is, I have. It's not that I don't use it.
Is it more just when you stub your toe?
No, not even then. I try not to. I just think it's an inbuilt thing that I have. Maybe it's something I use, but I have used it when it's extreme emotional situations. I have used it. I think you have heard me use it though, haven't you?
I've heard you use it.
You've used me other words as well, haven't you?
Yes.
The bombs I've used as well. But I have. It's extreme, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what I don't like to do, I mean, because I do meditation and stuff, I don't like to be. I like to have emotions, and I do, but I don't want to react to that emotion. I want to use that emotion. I want to use that emotion for my benefit to drive me to something.
Right.
So almost like sit with it and drive it.
We're way off tangent here now.
Okay.
I don't use those words when I'm genuinely angry.
Okay.
Whereas to you, I think everything I'm getting there, the emotional bit, means to use that sort of language is because you're in a fiercely emotional state.
Mm.
Whereas I use it quite casually as a comedy thing to help the atmosphere and stuff with people, because it generally gets a chuckle.
Yeah.
So I want to reshape your mind so that you don't see it as a negative
Okay.
or an aggression.
Okay.
We'll see how that goes. We'll track that over.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it's like reading rooms, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's reading rooms. It's like, because where I coach, and it depends on my audience and things like that. But yeah, I think I can do that.
Cool.
I think I can do that.
Right, I took us massively off track, so let's get back on and let's
Okay.
wrap this one up.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So again, look at perfection versus progress. I think it's important. Look at the results that you get from those things. So please just get started. But the way to get the progress is to just start and just review and just take further actions. So a couple of things here. So you've got an idea, write it down. Lee referenced about writing it down. This is always what I do. Like if you've got a lot of brain noise going on, write it down, get it out. Whatever works for you. Whether you've got record it, whether you write it, whether you storyboard it, whether you what's the other word you do? Vision board it. That's what I was looking for. Anything like that. But then then you want to execute and evolve, and I think that's part of executing plan and then having that innovation piece and evolving it. If you've got a soundboard of some, why not? But don't forget, this is your goal and visions. You've got to ask people who are going to give you constructive critique,
Yeah.
but are not there to kill your dream. Of course, the dream's may look a bit different to what you think, but
But they're going to be supportive of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And don't get fixated on a perfection outcome as well. So one of my things was actually having an outcome focus where I wanted it to be specific, and it had to be specific. If it wasn't specific, then I'd lose momentum. So don't be specific. Have the goal in mind, whatever the dream is, but be okay with it being different to what it is, because actually it's probably going to be better than what you imagined. This is what we're doing now is better than whatever I imagined.
Collaboration is key.
Literally, with us three here, like Ryan, you, I didn't even imagine this. I thought I'd be doing this on my own. This happened after what, 4 months or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever, I can't remember. So just be flexible on what that outcome looks like. Number 3, evaluate through evolution. Minimise any downsides. I talked to Lee before about this, and we sort of looked about our ideas. Is that if you're maybe you're a CEO, and whatever decision you take is going to potentially have massive ramifications, just minimise the downside, but don't be afraid of taking action. Because if you're in a business that needs to change, because all business need to change, because if you don't change, you're going to die. Don't be afraid to change it, because the thing, if you don't move it on, you don't change, don't evolve, you're going to die anyway. So just make sure you minimise the downsides, but take into account that you need to move, you need to shift. So I just look at that sort of thing. We're looking at high level. Whatever you are in your life, there's always going to be a downside. Minimise it to whatever you can, but you're never ever going to eliminate risk. I can walk out this room right now, fall over, smack my head, break my neck. That could happen right now if I get up right now, couldn't it? Yeah. So it's just minimising those things.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's what we'll talk about. It's just really doing that. For me at the moment, this evolution of this podcast, of this vision, working with you guys has been amazing, and the engagement on Twitter is amazing, and I would never ever have imagined that. People asking to be mentioned in our inspirational sort of tweets and things, never have imagined that. So that engagement on Twitter is something I wouldn't have even imagined in the outcome. So just keep engaging in that, look at the results, be proud of your effort, and that's where I'm going to sign off.
Excellent.
Oh.
No, it's really good. I've really enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll encourage a few more people to get out there, start doing stuff, and exactly like you say, stop stop doing nothing because perfection's unattainable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Absolutely, perfection is on the table, and I think it's a little bit. It's going to stop you from doing what you need to do.
No, excellent. It's always just remind everyone on Twitter. Joe is at JN Coaching Tech. We are at Listen to IN. That is Listen TOIN. Same as on Instagram. We've put this whole show up on there. We have the YouTube channel as well.
Got to mention some people.
Okay, who've we got there?
Can we just mention the School of Rock Stars have been tuning into the Instagram.
Thank you very much for following.
I don't know if I'm on there. Lucy Presents as well.
Thank you very much.
Stefan Francis 98 has also joined us.
Excellent. So some good follows there for us as well, which again, Joe, like you said, stuff you never have expected before, which is really good.
To say, like I said, some of these guys, I've seen they've followed, but there's someone on there that I've not seen before, which is, welcome. So if you're coming back, love it. Thank you very much.
So leave us some reviews, tell your friends and family, get people listening, and we will speak to you again next week.
Yeah, so this is Inspiration Nation. Catch you guys later.